fans are waiting with tremendous patience to witness Avengers Endgame. Said to cap off Phase 3 and 11 years of storytelling, the hype for the movie is unreal. But there are tiny clues and mysteries sprinkled through the MCU that could possibly hint at events that will come to pass in Endgame. Let's find out what they are. Ride together, die together. Tony and Cap aren't exactly on talking terms these days in the MCU. The two leaders of their respective branches of the Broken Avengers are complete polar opposites of each other, and that difference in ideology often causes them to clash and butt heads. Once the Sokovia Accords were brought to the table, things really got heated, as we know. But then Zemo had to go and make things even worse for our heroes by successfully causing Tony to hate Steve, which led to Steve and his allies being exiled as wanted criminals. You'll notice that Iron Man and Cap do not share any scenes together in Infinity War, despite being the two symbolic leaders of the Avengers. During the events of Age of Ultron, when discussing the possible outcomes of their upcoming confrontation with the murder bot Tony and Bruce created, Steve reassures Tony that by combining their efforts, they can pull through. Tony, being a bit of a pessimist, asks what happens if they fail, to which Steve replies, they'll lose together too. Considering the contracts are up for both Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr., and that the character arcs for Tony and Steve are pretty much over, is it fair to say that this was foreshadowing the demise of both Captain America and Iron Man by the time Phase 3 is over? Narratively, it would make sense, since these two are part of that original team, and it's now time to pass the torch onto someone else. It looks like if one goes, so does the other. Hawkeye. After the events of Age of Ultron, Clint basically went into retirement in order to be with his secret family. Which totally makes sense. The guy has a bow and arrow, and one of the newest recruits can actually play with magic, so it looks like he's a little out of his depth. But when the Avengers started fighting amongst each other, it took no convincing at all, and Clint came out of retirement to help his buddy Steve Rogers. So this is enough information to go on that Clint will do anything for his friends, no matter what his previous commitments or promises were. Many were wondering where Hawkeye was during the events of Infinity War, and we got a passing comment that both he and Scott Lang were on house arrest after the events of Civil War. At least these two got to spend time with their families as opposed to behind bars. Seriously, they dodged a bullet there. But in the Endgame trailer, we suddenly see Clint again. What's caused him to come back into the fight this time? Last time, he bailed on his family to join the fight, but things aren't so simple this time. We know Clint loves his family very much, but Clint isn't going by Hawkeye anymore. In fact, he looks pretty angry. That's likely due to the fact that he now goes by Ronin, and he's on a blood-soaked crusade after witnessing the death of his family in the decimation. Knowing that his family means so much to him that he kept them off the radar, and that the only thing to separate him from them was the Civil War conflict, shows that Clint is absolutely devastated, and likely not the same man we met all those years ago. Tony's clothing. The Avengers Endgame teaser trailer opened with the extended sequence featuring Tony Stark drifting through space, trying to send a message home to Pepper Potts. It's a powerful little scene, and while we know Tony isn't going to die within the first 20 minutes of the movie, he doesn't know that. But the directors did something interesting with the wardrobe that actually harkens back to the first Iron Man film. So while Jon Favreau's first film didn't intentionally set up Endgame, the Russos definitely appear to be lifting an element from the earlier films, namely Tony's black undershirt. While this doesn't hold any secrets as to what will be happening in this epic finale, it does give some insight to Tony's character. Last time we saw Tony in a similar outfit, he was a prisoner in a cave who thought he may never come home again. It was a huge turning point for Tony Stark, and would be the event that turned him into Iron Man. But in the cave, Tony had nothing except some scraps and Yinsen. Now, once again, Tony is left with nothing, and his fate is up in the air. That set photo. Sometimes the power of Twitter is enough to kick up a huge dust storm and get forums like Reddit so fired up that you'd think that the elixir of life was found nearby. The Russo brothers seemed very aware of this when they took to Twitter on September 19th, 2018, and released a seemingly innocent picture. But the caption is what got everyone freaking out. A simple tease telling fans to look hard was enough for this behind-the-scenes photo of a near-empty set to treat it as if it was the world's hardest game of Where's Waldo. Fans seemingly gravitated gravitated towards the latter in the image right away, as it appeared to be staged and was placed in such a way that it appeared to look like a capital letter A from our vantage point. This naturally led everyone to believe that Annihilation was confirmed to be the title. Next to the A, the support beam for the green screen is positioned to actually appear like a backslash, suggesting there is more than just this A to consider. And as it turns out, there was more. Next to the hypothetical slash, there was an equipment box, and if we let imagination work its magic a bit and let some assumptions come into play, then the metal framework on the box could fill in the gaps of what could be perceived as an E. Once we see that the picture is spelling out A/E, and that we know the title is Endgame, we could definitely assume that the Russos were pointing us in the right direction with this tease. Endgame. When a property as big as the MCU leaves fans waiting in anticipation for an answer, they tend to get a little antsy and eventually start theorizing. Thanks to false leaks and the rumor mill, the internet was convinced that the title for the fourth Avengers film would be Annihilation. And considering how Infinity War ended, that actually made a lot of sense. Many people also thought it was going to be Endgame, but the Russo brothers actually denied this title. But as it turns out, Endgame was the actual title. When the trailer debuted, Marvel withheld the title from us in the video title, only showing it to us during the title card at the end of the trailer. Then we realized that we've seen the term Endgame not once, but twice in the MCU so far, and both in Avengers films. The first one links all the way back to Age of Ultron, when Tony points to the sky and declares that space and its infinite unknown is the ultimate endgame for the Avengers. And he's got a point, since Thanos comes from a far-off planet and brings with him more pain and suffering than any other being in the universe. Tony and the rest of New York, and probably the world, are pretty terrified of space and its aliens after the Battle of New York, and for Tony, defending against space is his sole purpose in life now. Flash forward to Infinity War, and Doctor Strange tells Tony that now they're in the Endgame, right before he's decimated, suggesting that everything that comes next is part of the one successful plan Strange foresaw out of millions of failures. So it looks like the Avengers may be on the path to victory, but at what cost? Farmer Thanos. By the end of Infinity War, Thanos could be seen sitting on a porch, watching the sunrise on another fine-looking day. This image struck a chord with many fans, as they believed that this would be our first introduction to what many comic book fans have come to call Farmer Thanos. A teaser for Endgame all but confirmed this, as we get a shot of a scarecrow bearing Thanos' iconic armor, and a brief shot of the Mad Titan walking through a field. After all that death and destruction, the magnitude of his crusade, Thanos decides to lay low and simply retire into obscurity. This is likely due to the emotional toll his crusade took on him. When confronted with the child Gamora in the Soul Realm, he confirms to her and to the audience that being successful in his mission ultimately cost him everything. So, was it worth it? It's too early to say yet, but it seems that Thanos will be in for a bit of an emotional funk, and that living by himself in isolation serves almost as punishment as much as a reward. It's a given at this point that the Thanos the Avengers will see in Endgame will not be the same person he was during the beginning of Infinity War, and that alone makes us wonder what Thanos' ultimate role in the movie will be. The return of the robot. Right before the decimation, the Avengers were on a desperate mission to either keep Vision from Thanos or to destroy the Mind Stone, something that may have resulted in Vision's death. But the odds were stacked too greatly against their favor, and Thanos ultimately won by ripping the Mind Stone out of Vision's mind. So the Avengers are now without one of their strongest allies. Or are they? This one is more of a theory for the time being, but seeing as how the Red Skull came back in Infinity War, anything seems possible at this point. In Age of Ultron, the murder bot Ultron is trying to transfer his code into the vibranium body that will eventually become Vision's. But Ultron was unsuccessful, only achieving 75% completion. In the end, Vision came to be, coupled with Jarvis, bits of Ultron, and the Mind Stone. Vision is the one to ultimately kill the final Ultron, but we never actually see this happen. So it is entirely possible that this intentional obscuring of information was done for a reason. Is it possible that part of Vision, and therefore Ultron, still exists in the world as something of a backup plan for Vision? While he wouldn't have the stone, it does seem possible that this scene in Ultron was left in place, just in case there was the need to bring back Ultron or Vision to the bigger picture. Passage of time. This detail actually comes from Infinity War itself and from a passing comment the Russo brothers made at a special Q&A in 2018. Before the decimation happened, which is the official term for the snap if you didn't know, Thor swung into battle and plunged his shiny new axe Stormbreaker into Thanos' big purple chest. The film really hyped up this axe to be the one thing that could take out Thanos, yet as the Mad Titan states, Thor should have aimed for the head, as Thanos ultimately sees his mission through successfully. The film then cuts to everyone dying in a flurry of dust after Thanos flees from the battle. But Thanos was seriously wounded from that wound, so he's likely on death's door, right? Wrong! As it turns out, thanks to the final shot of the film, which saw Thanos sit himself on the porch to watch the sunrise. Despite some scarring on his arm, there's no visible chest wound, or scarring visible. When asked about this at the Collider event, all the Russos would say on the matter is, This leads us to think that the final shot of the film is actually in the Endgame timeline of events, which is likely some months after the events of Infinity War at least. After tending to himself and being able to move around at ease, Thanos finally makes good on his word to watch the sunrise, only after he's cured. This, along with the Russos' cryptic reply, is what suggests to us that there is a time jump between Infinity War and Endgame. So, what are some tiny details in the MCU that you think hint at the events that will come to pass in Endgame? Do you have any theories of your own? Is Thanos even the main villain of the movie? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in your playlist every day. Thanks for watching!